Flushing High School podcast. This podcast is where we share stories about moving, growing, and everything in between. In this episode, I'll be sharing the migration story of my father coming to America. And my family and I all come from Mexico. Mexico's our land, our country, our home. Though I wasn't born in Mexico, I come on here today to share my parents' experience, especially my papa's journey yet struggle to get here because I believe it is what makes up the person I am today. The story begins when Papa was 17 at a time. His main purpose was to make money and come back to Mexico to buy a home for him and his mother along with his siblings. Back in Mexico years ago, it was rough to be there. Money wasn't much, foods were limited, especially because Papa comes from a family of 8 individuals. There were times where they'd only eat tortillas with beans or eggs, sometimes even just a tortilla with salsa. Only one time a week they'd eat some sort of meat. It was the day everyone looked forward to. Being a 17-year-old who had to work from a young age, trying to help out in the house wasn't easy, but tolerable. But having to leave behind your loved ones, not being guaranteed to come back, is a different type of feeling that not only mentally but physically hurts. Papa's journey to America begins when he hands over the $3,000 to the leader of the group. I'd like to mention that back then, in Mexico, there was two options that people got to choose. The long way, but the cheaper way was paying $3,000 back in Mexico. However, this was a journey that not many were able to do or resist, and that took a lot longer, it being of 1 month. The other option was paying $5,000, and though it was quite hard to get that amount of money, it was the only option to get to America in the most comfortable way that you could think of. Back to Papa's journey. Papa handed over the $3,000 to the person that will be taking him, Papa, along with the rest of the immigrants to America. We can call him Miguel. Miguel has been helping immigrants for a while. He knew the routes, he knew the price, the amount of people to take, etc. He said they'd leave next week. It starts when Papa had left Puebla to arrive at Puebla Natlan, where he met the rest of individuals that would be going along with him. They all traveled together to Mexico City, then flew to Sonora. From there, they all got on what seemed like vans who took them to the stars of the desert. Before starting their walking journey in the desert, they gathered supplies: canned beans, canned food, water gallons, etc. Anything they could carry, they took. Once they were all prepared, they began their walk. While the first 3 days were incredibly tiring, nothing eventful happened. However, on the fourth day, everything seemed to change. The immigrants were surrounded by what can be called a cartel. Black vans surrounded them, men with masks and with what seemed like weapons. They made everyone go down and they took everyone's belongings. This was a really terrifying experience. Papa mentions that people were terrified as much as he was. Kids, children, babies, elderly people, etc. Unfortunately, in scenarios like these, the masked people tend to do other things, such as beat up people, rob, and even sexually harass individuals. This is exactly what had occurred. The masked people aggressively approached a young girl from the group of immigrants. They grabbed her and attempted to sexually harass her. Papa raised his voice. Oye, déjala en paz. Es mi familia. Déjala ir. The masked person pointed at Papa. Muy hombrecito, no? Papa was terrified. Have I made the right choice? Should I have remained silent? Will my journey end here? Why is nobody helping? Fortunately, the cartel let go of it. They let both the girl and my papa go. And Papa mentions that this was the most terrifying experience that he felt. Being a 17-year-old and raising your voice and going up to a group of men who are masked. and have weapons on them to defend a whole completely stranger was the most terrifying thing that he did. However, in my eyes, it's the most bravest thing that he could have done. Fast forward, they only took everyone's belongings. They took away people's supplies, food, water, clothing, etc. And those that were carrying cash, that was taken away from them too. However, later on day 5 or 6, Papa mentioned that they ran out of supplies. They had no water remaining, and all their canned food was gone. They lasted 15 days with no food or water. This led to people getting irritated and desperate. Who wouldn't? Being stuck in the same place, walking for hours, for days, feeling like you're going nowhere with no water or supplies has to be one of the most challenging things that a human can go through. As mentioned, this lasted 15 days. My papa mentions that in this journey, babies were also involved, meaning that some people were really eager to finish the journey when they would hear these babies cry. Papa mentions that there was specifically this man who he had yelled at the mother of a baby, "Calla ese niño, si no dáselo a los coyotes, que no es que somos más fáciles de encontrar con sus llantos." My papa tried to help the mother. He'd approach her and he'd stick by her side just in case. Papa mentions that this man was really eager and really irritated and really angry just due to the fact that he felt as if they were getting nowhere. Papa mentions that the lady was very thankful and really grateful for him. She had mentioned to him that he's so young, but he has such a future upon him as long as they can make it to the end of this journey. In a way, this gave Papa comfort and reassurance and joy to hear this because he felt as if though it was most terrifying things that he was facing, he was doing it with such a bravery and with positive and good intentions, and he knew that good things would come along his way for that. Fast forward to the 20th day, there was another scenario that occurred where an elderly lady was left behind. As I mentioned before, this is a journey that not many people make it through. It's very difficult, and it is most definitely not what you might expect or think compared to when you're living it. Papa mentions that the lady couldn't do it anymore. She had her feet way too swollen, her hands were swollen, her body was aching, she was tired, exhausted, she had given up. It was unfortunate to witness this because they were all in the same boat. They were just waiting to see when they'd give up. And this time, that lady was one in quite a few people who were left behind. This was very hard to witness because throughout this entire journey, Papa, along with the rest of the immigrants, had witnessed leftover dead bodies in the path from previous travelers, or perhaps just murdered by the carteles that were also the ones that quartered Papa and the rest of the immigrants and took away their belongings. Who knows? It was either or. However, there was leftover bodies in the desert. And to Papa, this was really hard because this was a journey where he was with this lady. They'd help each other, he'd be there. Papa was trying his best to help others in this journey. As I mentioned, the lady with the baby, the girl who was almost sexually harassed, and as well with this elderly lady. For Papa, this was not easy. He tried talking her through, saying that just a little longer, un poquito más, no se me rinda, we're almost close, ya casi llegamos. However, this lady just couldn't anymore. Her feet were swollen, her hands were swollen, she was blistered up, and her skin was peeled, even bleeding. It was really difficult and harsh conditions in order for her to keep going. The amount of walking affected all of the individuals in various ways. My papa mentions, for instance, for him, he at some point, since they had to walk day and night, accidentally he was pushed aside next to a bunch of cactus. As we're all well aware of, cactuses have spikes, and because of how dark it was at night, my papa was in pain. And with all the touching, the dirt, the sweat, it seemed like his wounds were getting irritated. Of course, when you get, it's a fight or flight reaction. When you've injured yourself, you will attempt to cure it or to clean it up, or even so, if it's irritating, you'd begin to scratch it. This was an issue because Papa's wounds, as mentioned, were getting irritated. They were getting swelled up, and they were what seemed to be getting infected. Too many obstacles, as tiny as they may seem, were testing everyone's patience. However, the one motivation they all kept with themselves, including my papa, was that once you're in America, you've made it through and you will be able to achieve everything you wanted to. However, fast forward to the 25th day, my papa was so close to giving up. He felt like giving up. But finally, the moment that everyone has been waiting for, the person who was leading, Miguel, has said that there was only 2 days left. They were super, super duper close to arriving to America. This brought Papa hope, and he was eager to arrive. The moment he arrived in America, he felt so relieved. All those days of sweat, pain, and exhaustion, as well as fear, were all finally worth it because he was now on the other side.
Thank you for listening to Dreams Across Borders, a Flushing High School podcast. This episode was written and produced by students at Flushing High School. In response to the current political climate, we have chosen to remain anonymous to ensure both safety of our participants and ensure their voices will be heard. If you enjoyed this episode, please take some time to donate to one of the following charities that provide services to refugees and immigrants in our communities. If you need legal advice or help, please reach out to these charities as well. International Rescue Committee, Doctors Without Borders, Refugees International, National Immigration Law Center, Make the Road New York, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees.